guys, Christian from Films here, back again with another video today. And this time we're doing another budget tips and techniques video, and as you can probably tell by the title, today we're going to talk about stabilizing your footage. But before we get into that, be sure to check out all of the links down in the description to our Facebook, Twitter, our own website. And while you're there, we also have all of the playlists down there for our short films, other budget tips and techniques, and our product reviews. And while you're at it, if you enjoy the video, be sure to click the like button, and if you want to see future content like this and all the other things I just listed, be sure to hit the subscribe and bell button so you can stay updated on all of our future uploads. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started right now with the video. So we'll start off with the basic tips and tools that you can use to get more stable footage. And before I really get into like the actual gear, the basic idea you need to know about stabilizing footage, especially moving footage, is to have 3 points of contact for your camera. Now, this can mean several different things. The first thing I want to talk about in terms of gear is going to be a tripod, so we'll use that as an example. So, the 3 points of contact refers to anything connected to your camera that then touches another surface. Right now, my camera is hooked up to a tripod, meaning its 3 points of contact are the 3 feet on the tripod touching the floor, creating this stable footage right now. And obviously, a tripod is a very easy way to get stable footage. As you can see right now, it's not shaking at all. It's just sitting here pointed at me. And if you have a tripod with a fluid head, you can easily do stuff like pans, tilts, all sorts of different movements just from a stationary position that'll keep your footage nice and stable, provided you got a steady hand if you're moving it around like that. But, as I said, the 3 points of contact can apply to more than just a tripod. It can also relate to things like a neck strap. If you've got a neck strap on, 1 point of contact would be where the strap is around your neck or wherever it is connected to your body. Another point of contact, if you were to hold it right, you'll have your elbows kind of against your chest. And each elbow counts as a point of contact. So if you've got both hands on there, you have 2 points of contact here, right at the elbows where they're touching my chest, and then you'd have the neck strap. That would be your 3 points of contact. That is the best way you can get stable footage. I'll get more into that. I just wanted to present the basic idea of points of contact to you before we jump into all of the different types of gear that you can use to keep your footage stable. So anyways, like I mentioned, we're going to start off with the tripod today. I've already gone over the 3 points of contact with you about it. And since it's just firmly planted on the ground for the most part, there's not really much movement going on with the tripod in terms of its points of contact. They're pretty much always going to be stationary unless you actually pick up the tripod and move it. So keeping that nice and steady, the points are never moving, your camera is always going to be steady unless you're, violently shaking the handle for whatever reason. With tripods, most of the times you can lock your head in place both vertically and horizontally to keep your camera in a nice stable position. If I were to loosen up my vertical tilt right now on my tripod, my camera would probably be drooping down and pointing at the floor at this point, or the weight actually would probably lean it backwards or it'd be pointed at the ceiling. You don't want either of those to happen, so be sure to lock in your head on your tripod if you're not having any moving shots or if there's no one behind the camera like I'm doing right now. Currently it is just me shooting with the camera pointed on a tripod directly at me. Alright, so the next tool we have is a dolly. Now I don't actually have one of these yet, but I have experimented with them before and I have used them. Essentially all they are is wheels for a tripod. So your 3 points of contact are going to be the wheels on the floor. And what it lets you do is it allows you to slide your tripod across the floor nice and easily. Or if you've got a dolly on tracks, that is usually even better because then it's moving smoothly either on a line or on a smooth curve that will keep your camera in the same rough position, just allowing you to move across and get good smooth footage. Using a dolly, like I said, is a little bit different because not only do you have to worry about your head at that point, and most likely if you're on, or depending on what kind of dolly you're using, you're going to have your tripod head locked and just use your wheels to turn. You might have your vertical tilt unlocked so you can move up and down like that as needed, but for the most part, if you're just using a normal floor dolly that's not on rails, you're probably just going to be leaving that thing locked and moving the tripod itself however you need. The next option is using a gimbal or a Steadicam. Now, I myself, I have not used a gimbal. Hey guys, this is Christian from about 2 weeks later, and since I've recorded this video, I have purchased a Ronin M gimbal, and I gotta say, I actually really do enjoy the thing, and I had rated about equivalent to my Steadicam. I still stand on the argument that Steadicams are more natural and more cinematic than gimbals, but gimbals are still a very helpful tool for independent filmmakers today, especially commercial filmmakers. Anyways, back to the rest of the video. I do have a Steadicam though, and I love the thing so much. It is a little bit different. It doesn't quite meet the 3 points of contact per se, because you're usually going to be, the Steadicam you're going to be holding in one hand here. You'll be holding the Steadicam with your left hand down here very, very loosely. And for the most part, the weights are what's going to do the balancing. And now how this works is basically you get the weights at the correct position needed to keep your Steadicam as vertical and as steady as possible, so that as you're moving along, you can move in freely in the air, you can rotate and turn however you need to, but the weights will keep your Steadicam as vertical as possible, and the weights will be dependent on the weight of your camera. When I have my C100 on, I usually have it on without any of the modifications, so I don't have the top mount or the side handle. I leave those off to reduce as much weight as possible, and then I have the maximum weight I can on my Steadicam because it's meant for lighter cameras, and I have to stretch it all the way out just to be able to keep the weight distribution equal. That's the thing, is it kind of works like a balance. It keeps the weight on the bottom and the weight on the top evenly distributed so that it is less likely to move. It still has the freeform movement, so you can move your hand and it won't affect the stabilizer as much. It will keep it as vertical as possible. A gimbal works in much the same way, except for the fact that it is not manual, it is digital, or is motor powered. So it is still sort of manual because you have to set it beforehand and get everything and whatnot done beforehand, but it's less likely to swivel in any sort of direction as you're moving because, like I said, it is motorized, so it will mechanically keep everything as straight as possible, and sometimes in footage it can kind of look a little unnatural. That's why I prefer the Steadicam look, especially for films, because it just feels more natural. It's got that natural fluidity to it with like the slight sways every now and then you might catch. It feels more natural rather than this rigid frame that kind of bounces every now and then, especially if you're walking and you're doing your best to keep yourself straight, but as you're walking there's always that little bit of bob that you just kind of can't control. A Steadicam kind of adds in the sway that makes that feel a little more natural than the human eye. Gimbals still work great for stuff like promotional videos, commercials, music videos, stuff like that. I don't feel that they really have a place in film yet. I really don't. And there are some gimbals that are trying to revolutionize that to where it keeps the frame completely steady, which I feel is going to be an impossible task given human movement and how unpredictable it is. That I would just rather take the Steadicam route. That way you also don't have to worry about batteries, you don't have to worry about gears breaking. And I'll probably do a whole video on the Steadicam versus gimbal argument later. I just kind of wanted to present a few points to you. Now, another tool you can use in stabilizing footage is an image stabilization, which is a feature that is going to be built into either a camera or a lens, or sometimes you can have a setup that does both. Right now I'm using my Canon C100, which does not have inbuilt body stabilization, but I do have a couple of lenses that have image stabilization on them, or optical stabilization sometimes. And what this does is it slightly crops down the frame just a little bit, and it kind of acts as a guide. Like, it looks at the key points in the frame and tries to kind of keep it centralized on that as much as it can, reducing as much of the micro jitter and shake as it can. But it usually doesn't do a whole lot. It's mostly for micro jitter. Like if you're just standing still, holding a camera, human hands have a tendency to just shake very slightly, and it causes this little micro jitter that can be really distracting, sometimes more than like a bigger shake. And it's just one of those things that viewers will notice. But if you have image stabilization on a camera or a lens, it will actually do its best to correct that as much as possible, and usually it can actually do a really good job. It's just another one of those things to help you out. I wouldn't recommend having these features on if you're using like a tripod or you're in a locked position, because of the fact that, like I said, it still crops down the image just that little bit, but it's enough that you might lose something that you really want in there. So if you're locked, most of these features you can turn on and off fairly easily. So I recommend, if, like I said, if you're on a tripod or just like have the camera sitting there, not moving at all, not handheld or anything like that, then I would recommend leaving it off. But if you're going like pure handheld or even using a Steadicam or sometimes a gimbal, it would be worth having in some cases depending on your uses. So it's really, a lot of this boils down to your situation and the kind of things that you plan to be doing. A lot of people can get away with just using a tripod. Some people are just doing what I'm doing right now and just sitting in front of a camera talking. Some people are out there recording all these extreme like sports videos and stuff. They might need something like a gimbal where image stabilization would actually be handy. So really, it just depends on what you're doing and how much movement you have in your scenes. That is what makes the huge difference here on what you actually need. So the next tool that I have here is actually more of a technique than a tool. It's using the slow motion wide angle combo. You can use these two things interchangeably with or without each other, using one or the other or both, however you like. Wide angles help to reduce the amount of shake, and not really reduce the amount of shake that is being caused or that is being shown in the video. It reduces the effects of it, so it's not as noticeable. When you're really up tight and close on something on a telephoto lens, shake is very easy to notice because it's so detailed. You can see every little thing in the frame that as soon as anything shifts slightly, it's so noticeable to the human eye. But in a wide angle, everything is really zoomed out and there's a huge perspective and there's not much detail. So it's harder to tell when things are actually shifting around in the frame. And it just makes your life a whole lot easier. Now, using the slow motion combo, that slow motion, when you slow time down, the shake isn't as pronounced because it's not going as fast. It's very slow. It looks more natural. So it would be like as if you were using a Steadicam and just a normal handheld shot at 24 frames a second if you're doing cinematic, 30 if you're doing video, and it would look more natural and smooth. When it's sped up, it obviously is a lot more noticeable because everything's just jumping around everywhere. There's whole mass confusion. But when it's slower, it's just kind of a nice, smooth thing like this, and it's not as distracting. So using those two things together is actually really helpful in reducing shake. So if you've got just some B-roll that you're shooting, or it's like an in-between scenes thing for a film where it is essentially B-roll with music over it and stuff like that, or like a montage or something, a little thing like that can be helpful. Just those little details can actually really help improve a lot of things in the end for you. And I apologize for the sound. There's a lot of stuff going on around me. I'm sharing this building with another business, so keep that in mind. I'm doing my best to reduce the sound as much as possible, but there's only so much I can do. Sorry about that. So I mentioned this before when I was bringing up the 3 points of contact concept. This one is the neck strap. Obviously, you've got the neck strap and the two elbows as your point of contact, and this is like the easiest way to get good smooth footage when you're purely handheld with the camera if you have a neck strap. You keep it on there, you lock it in nice and tight, keep your elbows tight against your body, push out the camera as far as you can, keep that neck tight strap, and you more or less just want to rotate your body. You can, go up and down like that, side to side. It'll get your footage a lot more stable. And actually, Peter McKinnon did a huge video on this about a lot of ways to reduce shake with handheld footage, and that was how I learned about the neck strap thing. You just keeping it locked and tight like that. He has a few other techniques in there that I think you guys should go check out. I might have his video linked up here in the title card. If not, it'll be down in the description or in the comments. Go check it out. Super helpful tips. Now, this is another technique you can use while shooting handheld or with a Steadicam, gimbal, whatever. This is the smooth walk technique, and the way that you do this is if you're walking forward or sideways, or if you're just walking with the camera in your hands at all, you want to slightly bend your knees. Not too much, but just a little bit so you can still walk right, but it also acts as kind of like a suspension for your legs that will help reduce the amount of shake traveling through your entire body. It kind of is like that midpoint that stops all of the vibration and all of the excess from going up and transferring to the rest of you, so you're not, bobbing up and down all that. You're kind of more just very, very, very lightly, if that, depending on how you're walking and what weight and camera you're carrying and whatnot. But when you don't have a dolly, or if you're shooting outside on rough ground or just rough ground anywhere, using this technique will save you a lot of headache. Because like I said, it acts as like a suspension for your legs, and just reduces that much more from traveling up through you and into the camera, meaning that your camera will be swaying and micro jittering a lot less. And the last thing I want to provide you guys with today in terms of tools and techniques is going to be warp stabilization. This is a feature found within several pro video editors. If you're using Adobe Premiere Pro, you'll definitely be able to find this feature. And what it does is it does the same thing as the image stabilization on a lens or a camera does, but now you have it in the editor as well. So you can pop it in there if you forgot to do that while you're shooting or something. You can throw on warp stabilizer in your editor, and it'll once again help take down that micro jitter, cropping it down slightly. It'll track a few points within the frame to try to keep everything as smooth as possible. So in essence, like I said, it just acts as like a secondary image stabilization, or if you don't have that on a camera or lens, you now have that option if you have, say, Adobe Premiere Pro, or I know it also exists in HitFilm. I don't remember if it's in Express. I know it's in HitFilm Pro. But just be sure to check your editor, see if you have the feature, go into your effects panel, type it in, or Google it, see if your editor has that ability. If not, think about picking up something like HitFilm Express that does have that ability if you ever need it. Now, if you followed all of the other steps in this video, warp stabilization should really be a last resort because it's going to affect your footage the most in terms of outside stabilizers or any sort of digital stabilization. It is going to affect your footage the most. So kind of be wary on using it. Like I said, it really should be a last-ditch effort, and it should be like the last thing you have to go to if you really, really, really need that stable footage. And one thing I want you to remember before leaving this video is that not all of these techniques will provide perfectly buttery smooth video. So it will still produce some shake. If you're really unlucky, it'll still produce some micro jitter. These are just things to help kind of reduce that and make the image more pleasing to the eye rather than violently shaking everywhere and distracting your viewers from whatever's on screen because they're just worried about all of the shake and it makes the video seem unprofessional and no one wants to watch it. When it's like that, it gets confusing to the brain sometimes and people will just click away if they don't want to watch the video because of that. So I just really wanted to point that out to you guys that not all of these things will get you perfectly buttery smooth footage, but the best way to get the best results out of your footage is to use several of these techniques together. Say, for example, you're shooting a film, you're working on a scene, you're going handheld with a Steadicam, you got just a little bit of shake in there, so you throw on your image stabilization on your lens. Okay, you're looking pretty good there, but you're already shooting at a wide angle, so that's helping you out a lot. But it's a scene where slow motion could actually work, so you switch that up to 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second, whatever you're using for slow motion, and you just help it make it that much more smooth. Just throwing all these things together will really help boggle down and get rid of some of that extra shake from your video and make things look a lot more professional and clean looking. So thank you all today for joining me in this video. I hope this has helped you at least somewhat, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to click that like button and hit subscribe and the bell notification for future uploads like this, as well as tech reviews and our very own short films. I hope to see you guys all in the next video. That's all I got for you today. Peace out.
Okay, I've been working like 3 jobs. Probably why I never see ya. Probably why I never have time for the fake friends that won't be ya. Oh God, I've been running now. Up early when the sun is out. Not setting out my own soul, but those real ones, they coming out. Oh look who's reaching out. Old friends wanna feature now. They don't work, so they need it free. Ooh.